Okay, thank you. So this talk.
Yeah, it's not a hearing test.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I noticed that some of you are like a little sleepy. So okay, this talk is about the validity evidence we collected for the PTP test the CeLCAR has developed. So this test is about the grammar test in a multiple choice test format. Some of you may really do not like this type of multiple choice test because this test is not really authentic, right? This type of test does not reflect what people do in their real life using language, but others love this kind of test, especially students, right? This test is terrific. I mean, this is one of the best tests that I've ever taken in their life. In fact, that's the only type of test they take in their life. But anyway, this test has a very practical, right? And it has also a very high objectivity in scoring. So there's the pros and cons of using multiple choice test. But no matter how much people love this type of test, but we, as a test developer and tester, we have a responsibility to show people that how much this type of test measure, what it intends to measure, and to what extent this type of selected response format, like multiple choice tests, can be related to their test performance in their writing or speaking. So this study has been conducted to answer those questions. Let me first talk about the testing project, the proficiency test project the CeLCAR has launched a few years ago. This is a multi-year project to develop proficiency guidelines and online tests for many Central Asian languages, including Mongolian, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Pashto, Turkmen, Uyghur, and Uzbek. Based on the specific construction of each language, using some existing proficiency guidelines like ACFO, ILR, and Common European Framework reference for languages. These guidelines are based on the framework, the most relevant framework of language use and language abilities. So using these guidelines, we develop multi-level tests including 3 different levels: novice, intermediate, advanced, for listening, grammar, and reading sections. And we make sure that the text and items are tailored to ability level of test takers we are using. So we could make sure that these tests can be used as a better judgment of the proficiency levels. So among these reading, the listening, and grammar tests, we focus on the grammar test, especially the novice level grammar test. This test based on the Uzbek PTP structural list, covering the different grammatical structures and common errors Uzbek learners often make. And then these tests consist of 3 different types: sentence completions and error identifications, and the gap fill task. Gap fill task is similar to sentence completion, but it's like kind of a closed test, but we delete the words rationally, not just randomly. And then in terms of the levels, we have a novice level, 1, 2, and intermediate levels. Okay, so the major goal of this study is establish the construct validity. Construct validity is one of the important qualities of a test usefulness, like reliability, authenticity, interactiveness, impact, and practicality. But the construct validity is the heart of the qualities of test usefulness. It refers to the meaningfulness and appropriateness interpretation we make on the basis of test scores. But we have some challenges in establishing construct validity of a multiple choice grammar test, because it could be just limited interpreting the grammar skills like receptive and explicit knowledge. You're not sure how much you can say about their productive and implicit grammatical knowledge. So based on the grammatical knowledge, the different aspects of the grammatical knowledge, the bottom defined. So grammatical knowledge can be divided into receptive versus productive knowledge. So when you like try to understand what is being said and then try to like respond with fluency in real life in speaking situations, we often use a receptive grammatical the productive knowledge. But when you like read the listen, and we use a receptive grammatical knowledge. But the most common division of grammatical knowledge is, according to Alice, is explicit and implicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge is like refers to some intuitive tacit knowledge we use when we try to understand what people say. Whereas explicit knowledge is like related to some conscious understanding of specific rules as a monitor of a performance. So it allows us to kind of verbalize the rules, the regulations we know about the language. Okay, and then different measures of grammatical knowledge has been used. The most common one is a grammaticality judgment task. It could be timed and untimed, and also a multiple choice grammar test used as we did. And also like oral description task, interview is used, an essay, translations, and sometimes a very specific metalinguistic knowledge test is used to assess people's different aspect of grammatical knowledge. Okay, the previous research has shown that there is strong task effect. In other words, people perform quite differently across different tasks. The Toron in 1985 said that the reason why we have such strong task effect is because learners tend to have a different degrees of attention to the forms, and the nature of a discourse is different across the different tasks. And then obviously, if the task is less demanding, they tend to perform better than the task was a little bit complex. Then Alice and then Elder analysts, I think 2005, they show that they ran some kind of a factor analysis. So students did a multiple task related to the grammatical knowledge, and they found that the imitation task, oral narrative, and timed grammatical judgment task kind of grouped together under one factor. And the two type of tasks, like untimed grammatical judgment task and metalinguistic knowledge task, kind of group another factor. So they said that this kind of factor analysis results can be indicator of two possible the concepts of a grammatical knowledge. Okay, so based on these research findings, I come up with the three different research questions. So the first one is, to what extent the multiple choice Uzbek grammar test scores reveal explicit grammatical knowledge as intended? Number two, to what extent the multiple choice Uzbek grammar tests reflect different levels of overall grammatical knowledge, including implicit grammatical knowledge? To what degree a multiple choice Uzbek grammar test scores related to other measures of productive implicit grammatical knowledge? To answer these questions, we recruited 12 undergraduate graduate students enrolled in the large Midwestern university. You can tell which university it is, but I won't tell you. In terms of the proficiency level, we have a 6 intermediate to high to advanced who learn Uzbek about 1 to 3 years. And we have a novice level students who learn Uzbek only within 1 year. We have 9 males and 3 females, and the ages ranging from 20 to 31. They're L1s, mostly English speakers, but surprisingly, we have 2 Korean speakers who learn Uzbek. But the interesting is that we probably see that some kind of strong L2 effect on L3 because most of them very fluent either in Russian or Persian. One person is very fluent in the Turkish too. So in terms of the material, we use introductory Uzbek PTP multiple grammar tests delivered online as 30 items. And then we use a written translation task. So we have 10 English sentences intended to measure the degree of control of various grammatical points in Uzbek, including particles, participles, conditionals, tense, compound verbs, etc. And we also asked them to write a written essay. So like, hey, you are admitted to Uzbek University, and then one of the requirements is write an essay in Uzbek. In your essay, tell us about your why you want to come to school and where you started learning Uzbek, your interests, your future plans, and then you can write your essay either in Latin or Cyrillic alphabet. And so this is the prompt we gave to our students. There's another task So students orally narrate these 3 different pictures. So they have to narrate these pictures in different time frames, past, present, and future. Okay, and then minimize some kind of ordering effect. We counterbalance all these tasks, but note that the multiple choice test was given the last time, because if you give a multiple choice in the beginning, they may pick up some of the grammars and they pay more attention to the grammatical features. So we put the grammar test the last session. Okay, so to answer the first questions, to what extent does multiple Uzbek grammar test score reveal the expert's grammatical knowledge? We checked the reliability first, and it was 0.78, which wasn't high as you want it to be, but considering we have only 12 participants, it was pretty high and acceptable. And one thing we did was interesting is that, can you hear me well? Okay, so they also did, I forgot to mention this task. They did a retrospective think aloud task so that we can make sure that students get this item correctly because they know the correct answer. So to minimize some kind of a guessing or any kind of mistake they can make during the task, we asked the students to verbalize their rationale for their choices they had made during the task. So we have 12 students, and then we identify which items they guess, which items they miss, although they know the answers. So we got the original score. This is the raw score they got, and this is the ideal score. So we counted these guessed items, mistaken items. And we look at the correlation is pretty high, 0.90. So we could say that our test can be a good predictor of their meta-linguistic knowledge or explicit grammatical knowledge in Uzbek. But as you can see that here, these students, low-level students, like he guessed the many items, but at the same time, he got the many items wrong by mistake. So we could say that our test has a little bit large measurement errors for low-level Uzbek learners. And then what we did is like to what extent Uzbek grammar test reflect different levels of overall grammatical knowledge. We divide the group into 2 levels, the high level and low levels. And we look at the multiple choice test scores, and we found that these test scores are statistically different between high and low level Uzbek learners, so indicating that our test is some kind of a constant validity, right? Our test can differentiate between high and low level students, but this students, the L1 is English, but he learned Turkish as an L2, and he's taking Uzbek as his 3rd language. Although he learned Uzbek only for 2 months, but he got really high score on the test, 24. Right? So we found that some kind of it's hard to tell whether we have an L2 effect on L2 acquisition, although because we have only one student who speaks Turkish as L2, but I mean it's possible that there's some strong L2 effect on L3. Okay, and then we ran some item analysis for all these 30 items. So item analysis is about the percentage of students who got specific item correct. That is the item facility, or we call p-value. And the b-index is about difference in the IF between high and low level students. As you can see, like item 4, 5, 6, all the students get the item correct, so we have no discriminative power at all, right? And sometimes we have a negative values for the b-index, which means that low-level students got the item correct, but the high-level students got some high-level student actually one student missed the items, right? And we did an item analysis for error identification questions as well. The values looks better than sentence completion task, right? Most of the b-index is higher, right? Except for the item 22. And then gap fill questions. This item statistics is really, really best, right? It's a really good, showing that this type of item really distinguishes well between high and low level Uzbek learners. Okay, this is, I think, most interesting questions we raised. So to what degree the multiple choice Uzbek test related to other measures like productive linguistic knowledge? So we looked at the correlations between multiple choice test score and their scores in grammar and translation, essay, and oral narrations. So for essay and oral narrations, we count all the grammatical errors they made divided by the total number of words they produce. So we got the ratio. So that we use it as an indicator of their grammatical knowledge. So as you can see that the multiple choice test is most highly correlated with the translation score. But it's also kind of it should be negatively related, right? If you have really high score, you have very low the error rate in grammar. So it's related to the essay scores in grammar. It's also the grammar scores in oral narrations. But as you can see that is the multiple choice test is the least correlated with the oral narrations. So regarding reliability, it was acceptable. It's not as high as we want to be, but it's acceptable given that we have only 12 learners. And multiple choice.
Step to the mic.
Okay. So multiple choice, PTP. PTP stands for Proficiency Testing Project. We use these acronyms in CeLCAR. So PTP, Uzbek novice grammar test can reflect learners' actual knowledge fairly well, but it's some measurement errors, especially for low levels. We just found that a lot of low-level students miss the items by mistakes or can get the item correct by chance. And also we know that Uzbek tests can reliably discriminate between high and low-level Uzbek learners. And then we also found that there's but there's some levels of other different seem to influence the grammar mastery with Uzbek grammar knowledge. Like, so there's some possible L2 effect may be plausible. And most of the sentence completion items that reflect the intermediate levels kind of fail to distinguish between high and low level students. So probably in a future, we probably need to tweak those items to have a more ideal number of item discriminations. And then is it probably last one? So multiple grammar tests seem to be highly correlated with other measures with Uzbek grammar knowledge, but it's kind of a more strongly correlated with the translation score, which would which would draw more attention to the forms than essay and oral discrim task. Tapping 10% knowledge, corroborating this finding is kind of in line with the previous findings. Okay, I have one disclaimer here. I have zero knowledge of Uzbek. So, but thanks to my previous students, Nigora and Mahmouda, who helped me the test design and data collections. So thanks to their help that I could conduct this study. Okay, so there's going to be no alarm. So thank you. Okay. So any question? Yes, in the back.
So thank you. The way I understand construct validity is basically it's a difficult concept, as you said, but the focus is the scores and the consequence of that score on other performance variables, right? And what you did here is that you used correlations between your grammaticality multiple choice test and between that and essay writing and oral narration. Right, correct. But the way you scored these two tasks was actually pretty much a very crude method, right? You counted the number of grammatical mistakes and divided them by the number of words. What you're essentially doing is that you're actually having yet another grammatical knowledge test disguised under some sort of another, in another task. So, I mean, of course that correlation is going to be strong because you're also measuring grammar there. So my understanding of, maybe you could correct me on that, maybe I don't have a good understanding of construct validity. I thought you get one score on a particular task and then you correlate that task on something a bit different. Let's say, a pragmatic knowledge, or I don't know, you look at that kind of a correlation, not between two different grammaticality tasks or multiple grammaticality tasks.
Oh, okay,
You see
okay.
what I'm
Yeah, I think
saying?
I think I understand your question. So, your the questions about concept validity is why do you only have just like bunch of grammar tests? We probably have like other measures of language knowledge, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's correct in some sense, but I mean here the construct that I'm interested in is not just overall grammatical knowledge. I'm interested about different aspects of grammatical knowledge, the implicit grammatical knowledge and explicit grammatical knowledge. So I have a task tapping into these different types of grammatical knowledge. So that's why I don't have any kinds of other tests measuring different aspects of language knowledge like pragmatics, phonology, or yeah. Yes, Rex.
So,
It's coming,
I
Rex.
understand. Thanks. Hi. Thank you for your talk. I understand how test takers could get the right answer coincidentally. I didn't understand how they would get the wrong answer even though they actually controlled the point, or perhaps the grammatical point, or perhaps I misunderstood what you were saying. It seemed like there were sort of false positives and false negatives.
Right. So there are especially low-level students who actually got some answers correct, but in a retrospective think aloud sessions, we found that they got the answer right, but for wrong reasons. So they do not have actually correct grammatical knowledge, but they just got the item correct by chance. That's one case. There's also another cases that they just like mischoose some options, although they know the grammatical knowledge behind this task. So we could kind of factor out in that think aloud sessions. So, or there's some cases, especially sentence completion task, some of the options a little bit not clear, a little bit ambiguous. So there's some kind of the errors related to the question itself, right? So there could be possible two scenarios, right? You could miss the question although you know the answer, or you can get the answer correct just by chance, just by guessing.
And also, I was wondering if there was anything in particular about designing a test like this for a less commonly studied, Zildina told me I should say, a less commonly studied language as opposed to, redoing one of the English language tests, for example.
Yeah, that's really good questions, because when we talk about less commonly studied language, we have to be careful about using the term. One thing that we have to think about is we're going to have an extremely low sample size. So I don't think it's possible for us to use like the statistics techniques we use for large-scale tests for this kind of test. So we have to be a little bit careful about using some stats we use for large-scale tests to the low-level task. And about the test design, and the thing is, I mean, it's applied to the Korean actually too. We don't have many enrollments compared to other mostly taught languages. We don't have really like advanced level students. So like, I mean, one of the audience recommended using like OPI for assessing their proficiency level, but we cannot use OPI because we have a lot of low-level students. So I think we have to come up with the more task appropriate for the low-level students. So we have to think about some more low-level tasks that could distinguish among the low-level people. So I mean, good metaphor would be like, if you want to know how well and how high they can jump, you could use like a yardstick we use like in a large-scale proficiency test, we could like a 5-meter yardstick. But if your test takers or students are really like can jump only like 1 meter, the 5-meter yardstick is useless. But then we needed like a 50 centimeter, 40 centimeter 30 centimeter yardstick, see that how well they can jump over the yardstick. So we think about, I think we have a more low level, beginning level appropriate task to distinguish their levels in more fine grained manner. Did I answer your questions? Sort of. Yes. Yana. Not Yana, sorry. Oh my goodness. Bora. Sorry.
All right, thank you for the nice talk. I was wondering how you control to elicit the target grammar when you do the narration or essay test. Because if you do the multiple choice test, that it is pretty good to reflect the tester's intention by including the target forms that are taught to the students. But if you have essay or narration test, there would be an avoiding from the students. So maybe you would test the implicit knowledge, but not necessarily very similar grammar, target grammar that was tested in the multiple choice test. So how would you control the illustration, and do you think you're successful in illustrating the target grammar from the students?
Okay, so Bora, that was really good questions. I mean, that's kind of the puzzle we didn't actually solve. I mean, so those essay and oral narration tasks, I would say is more authentic than other type of tasks, but we have a less controlling power. So we have a problems in testing we call the construct under representations. So the grammar points we could elicit through these, the oral narration and essay is pretty limited. I mean, that's related to some task design issues, yeah, I have to say that those two tasks, a productive type of task, has a limitation of eliciting all the target grammar forms we want to get. I mean, that's why we have a higher correlation with translation and multiple choice tasks, but not with the oral narration and the essay task. Rex.
But couldn't you introduce some things? Instead of just counting up the words, counting up the errors and dividing by the number of words, couldn't you introduce some rubrics that would give test takers, points or whatever for complex structures, for coherence, cohesion, advanced vocabulary depth and things like that?
Right. I think that's the more common way we assess grammatical knowledge in real world in testing situations, right? Instead of like counting all these small bits of pieces of the grammatical errors, we give some kind of a overall holistic score for the grammar points. And yeah, I mean, that's another way we could assess their grammatical knowledge in more or less subjective way, but it's more common way we assess their knowledge.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.